Now tuned into the greatest.
The Run with Manny Wilson Podcast.
The Run with Manny Wilson Podcast.
The best sports podcast there is.
Yes, sir. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Run with me, Manny Wilson, all the way from Detroit to Chicago to your speakers and headphones. I appreciate you tuning in to the first interactive sports podcast, a community that makes sure your voice is heard. So if you hear something you agree with, you disagree with, you like or you dislike, go ahead, shoot us a quick take, 219-413-9405. And of course, we'll play your take back on our next episode. And shout out to SeatGeek for sponsoring this episode. Get $20 off your first ticket purchase when you use the promo code, The Run Podcast. Now, this code can only be applied for first-time users on the mobile app or website. So I don't know about you, but I'm going to a couple games this year, so I had to create me an account, use the promo code, save myself $20. Anyway, I'm here with a special guest. I'm here with the Atlanta Falcons insider with the Falcoholic and also the host of Dirty Bids Brews. Kevin Knight is here with me today. How's it going, Kevin?
Going good, Manny. Nice. We've been trying to set this up for a couple weeks, so glad we can finally make it work.
Absolutely, man. Me too. I'm super excited to get it started, man. Get to talk to another Falcons fan, and you know a lot about the Falcons. You cover the Falcons a lot. You talk about. I see the articles and everything you write about them. So definitely, first, good work. I see. But let's go ahead and break it down. Of course, man. Let's break it down. I got to start right first and foremost. The thing with this team that's been driving me the craziest is been the inconsistency within the offense. So I got to ask, what's up with all the inconsistency within the Atlanta Falcons offense? What are you noticing here?
Yeah, I think, well, when they've been losing offensive linemen in the middle of games, and that obviously disrupts your flow whenever that happens. So this week they had left guard Matthew Bergeron leave the game with what was initially called a concussion and then changed to a neck injury, which of course makes everyone panic. He's fine. He's back at practice. Apparently he's good to go. So thankfully, but you lose him in the middle of what was honestly one of his best games. But earlier this year, we lost Drew Dahlman and Caleb McGarry in the same game. Those guys have missed time. We got Ryan Newsel in there now, but he had to miss a few plays last week for Matt Hennessy, another reunion with a former Falcon. So they've been shuffling a lot of offensive linemen in. That always creates problems. But, the other side of the coin is Kirk Cousins does a lot of things well. He can't move. Like, he can't evade pressure. So when they do lose guys and they get into the backfield and get to him, that can frazzle him a little bit. I think in some ways, like all the heroics that he's been able to pull off for this team so far have maybe given him a little too much confidence in being able to continue to do that. I think against the Seahawks, that's what we really saw, was that he believed fully that he could come back in that game. And I think he could have, but a little too much hero ball, a little too reckless with the football, ends up fumbling when he tried to extend a play when he probably should have just taken the sack or thrown it away. And just a little bit of off accuracy. But honestly, like, if you take away the turnovers, which you can't do, but if you did take away the turnovers by some kind of magic potion, then the Falcons had 400 yards of offense. They held the ball longer than the Seahawks, and Bijan Robinson in the run game had arguably their best game of the season. So
absolutely,
the offense is moving in the right direction. This was definitely a blunder, but I'm glad they had the blunder against a non-division opponent, because we got a lot of critical division games coming up. So hopefully we can get this out of the system and they can start they can keep growing, because I think the offense as a whole has gotten a lot more productive, especially how poorly they started the season.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Early on in the season was a struggle with the offense. We were winning games strictly because of our defense. So I definitely agree with that part. And another aspect I thought was hurting the Falcons on the offensive end was a little bit of the play calling. Obviously, as you mentioned, shuffling the linemen is always going to be a huge hurt for any team trying to progress and show some good looks on the offensive end. But there was a little bit of the play call too that was struggling. In a game a couple weeks ago against the Panthers, I was even terrified a little bit because I'm like, all right, now, are we going to ever run the ball? And I'm like, okay, obviously, with the struggles with the offensive line, it makes you a little weary. But when you got guys like Bijan and Algier who are so explosive in the backfield, I'm like, you have to get them involved. So it was nerve-wracking a little bit for the Panthers, at least within the first 3 quarters. And then, obviously, we know they started to pull away. So thankfully, I was able to feel better. But with the Seahawks game, I kind of felt like the Seahawks game was just something that was brewing up to happen because the first few games, the offense wasn't really looking tremendous. They were still trying to find the groove, in my opinion. So when we played the Seahawks, who are a fairly solid team on both ends of the ball, there was just some things that couldn't really get clicking, and coming off those big momentum type of wins, I just couldn't imagine and couldn't help but to think that we were going to run into a team that were going to shut us down from getting the lucky type of plays or the bailout type of plays. So I was thinking about that stuff, but I do also want to mention too, because as you mentioned, the linemen are going down. We know the linebackers have some injuries. Also, defensive lineman is struggling right now too. I want to know, what's your realistic thoughts of the Atlanta Falcons landing another big defensive lineman before the trade deadline? Like, maybe not a Myles Garrett, who knows? Maybe if it happens, it happens. But guys like even a Jeffrey Simmons in the Tennessee Titans, like if they could land another All-Pro defensive lineman, what's the chances of that actually happening?
I think like that type of trade, like for Jeffrey Simmons, who's one of my favorite players. So I mean, I would definitely like it, but I don't think I don't think they're willing to give up the capital necessary, and they have so much money tied up on the interior as it is. I think they kind of would probably feel like that was a bridge too far. But his teammate Harold Landry, that's a different story. Harold Landry is going into one of the last years of his deal. I think that's a lot easier to swallow, and you could probably get that deal done for a much lower pick. Landry's going to be more of a rental type guy, not necessarily a long-term fix, but they need, like you said, they need all the help they can get. I would be watching him. I know there's guys that like Azeez Ojulari from the Giants as a potential one to target. Josh Uche is another one potentially you could go after. I think they're probably looking to more strengthen the rotation as opposed to getting like an impact guy. I think Judon was that guy. Unfortunately, that doesn't look like it's going to work out. I'm still hoping that he can maybe get a little bit healthier, but that was probably their big swing, and it doesn't. That seems like that's missed. So they're probably going to have to settle for someone that's just going to boost the rotation, and maybe that would be enough. I think the secondary has played well, but I think this defense is very, very stagnant. They don't really change much. They run nickel like basically all game. I mean, higher than any other team. Even at end of half situations when you don't really need to have linebackers out there, they still put linebackers out there. They're going to have to make some adjustments to the scheme. I think the pass rush is obviously not good enough, but I think that the rest of the personnel is good enough for this defense to do enough. I think they came up against a team in the Seahawks who are just a really good offense. And, the Seahawks' weakness is their offensive line. If you can get pressure on Geno Smith, we've seen teams like the Giants beat them by doing that. The Falcons can't do it. So we saw what it looks like when you play that team and you can't get pressure. And that's going to happen to this team. But I think the Falcons had a good chance to win that shootout with them if they don't turn the ball over 3 times. You can't have that. So.
Yeah, that was a big issue, man. Just the turnovers. It was 3 straight possessions of turnovers in that second half. And I mean, we talk about the defense too, and the defense, they tried to show up at the end of the game. I mean, they got stops. They limited them to only 40, I think it was under 50 rushing yards in the back end of that second half. So like, that's something they were trying to do. And Geno Smith only completing 3 passes too was something. It just shows like, okay, they have some sort of momentum swinging their way, but when offense is turning the ball over and keeping the defense on the field, it's just like, oh my gosh, like, can we make something happen? So anyway, look, I want to move over to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're about to look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week. We beat them the first time in kind of a thriller, I guess you could say. It was a wild game, had everyone up late on their toes, a big time win for Kirk Cousins in prime time. But this one's going to happen. It's happening at noon, depending on where you are in the time zone, or 1 p.m. Eastern Standard, whatever. Playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I'm a little weary because obviously Tampa Bay, they have some injuries in their big receivers, Mike Evans and Godwin. And last time we seen the Falcons like play a team that weren't that good in the Carolina Panthers, they started off slow. So that's my worry here, is that although the Tampa Bay Buccaneers don't have their big time receivers, I don't think they're going to start off slow. So I just want to hear from you. What should be the main focus coming into this Tampa Bay Buccaneers game here?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to figure out a way to stop the run, because I think the Buccaneers are going to go to a much more run-heavy approach without their receivers. I mean, there's no way they're going to be able to continue playing football the way they were without
Absolutely
Mike
not.
Evans and Chris Godwin.
No.
And you know, Jalen McMillan has been kind of a disappointment for them. I think he has like the lowest catch rate of any receiver in the NFL right now. You know, Sterling Shepard, I guess, has been kind of a nice surprise.
Yeah.
But, you know, coming off basically the free agent wire, but you know, and we know that Trey Palmer can be a deep threat for them, but it's just they can't run the offense through the receivers anymore, and that's going to require kind of a wholesale shift away from that to a surprisingly good run game. Now Bucky Irving picked up a toe injury out of nowhere, so it seems like that might be more of a two-headed rushing attack with Sean Tucker and Rashad White, with Bucky Irving possibly being injured. So the Falcons are going to have to find a way to stop the run, and I think if they can plug up the run against this Bucs team, which is a lot of teams have struggled to do lately, that's going to be the key, because I think this Bucs team, if you force them to pass the ball, they're going to have a lot more problems. And as we saw towards the end of that Ravens game, like Baker Mayfield's not going to change the way he plays football. So he's going to continue to chuck it out there for these guys and expect guys to make plays. And he could trust Chris Godwin and Mike Evans to do that. I don't know that you can trust these other guys to come down with that ball. And that's going to potentially lead to more turnovers and more of that you know, the other side of the coin for Baker could rear its head more, given they've kind of lost their two main guys out there. So I mean, the Falcons haven't stopped the run well. They did actually have one of their best games against the run last week against the Seahawks, interestingly enough. But so if they can continue that and make the Bucs, you know, have to pass the ball, which you don't really usually say that against this Bucs team. That's a new thing for them. But I think that's going to be the key, because I think this Falcons secondary is better than people think, and I think that I mean, they could definitely handle those Bucs weapons. They're not going to be able to get pressure. We know that. So that, you know, if you probably just need to play coverage and see if you can force Baker into some mistakes and just don't let him run the ball all over you.
Yeah, I would go around that too. I 1000% agree with that. You definitely want to focus in on the run. I doubt the Tampa Bay Buccaneers kind of slow down on passing the ball, just because that's been their identity for so long. Within the past 2 years, we've seen Baker Mayfield really let it fly in the air and target his big time receivers. But even though those guys are out, you still got some sort of threats out there with Shepard. I mean, we've seen the kind of glow up he's been having over the past few weeks. So you just want to be concerned. And I'm not really a fan of bringing pressure. I noticed the Falcons tried to do a little bit last week, and it's just I'm not with it, man. I feel like every time they start to bring pressure, the pass rush is just not good enough to start bringing pressure and still protect over top. So that's where I sit on that. I don't want to say play conservative, because I hate when they play conservative, because it does allow the run game to open up. But I think above all, if you focus on the run game, they do have a good shot. And then obviously, as we both know, they got to make sure the offense is clicking on all cylinders. Like, please, let's not make this game another nail biter coming down to the end when they don't have any weapons right now, because if they do, it's going to be tragic to watch, especially when they have such an advantage right now coming into the game, because Bucs are down so many weapons. So other than that, I just want to say, man, anything you want to add regarding the Falcons and the job they're doing this year so far, or maybe something to look forward to coming up in the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think Zach Robinson has done a really good job of evolving this offense week over week. You know, we saw how it started, that just abomination game plan in week one that everyone was like, oh, is Kirk Cousins in a wheelchair? Like he can't run play action, or what's going on? That apparently was not the case. They just decided to do that. He threw that out completely. We'd never seen the offense look like that again.
Thank God.
And ever since, I think he's been iterating every week and adding new wrinkles, and they've been adding more inside runs, and they've been doing more stuff. I think Zach Robinson gets a big thumbs up from me from continuing to work on this offense. We need to see that from Jimmy Lake. We haven't really seen that yet. The defense has been totally stagnant. We need to see some new guys out there. We need to continue to try to find a combination that works on the interior, try to find a way to get more consistent run stopping, and, you know, Troy Anderson. Hopefully we'll see Troy Anderson return this week. Because it's just such a shame that he had kind of his breakout game against the Saints and then gets hurt on special teams in the fourth quarter. Man. It's like, why is this man playing special teams in the fourth quarter?
I know he's like so good against the Saints. He played remarkable against the Saints.
Yeah. They need him bad. They need him real bad.
Yeah.
I don't think Nate Landman is fully healthy yet. He looks, sluggish. And I think he's playing because he's an Iron Man and they need him.
Yep.
But they would probably like him to be able to rest or just play some run-specific downs and then let Troy handle that work. And Troy's really their cover guy, so they need him.
Absolutely.
Hopefully he can get back out there this week. That would be a big boost for the defense.
Yeah, I agree with that. He held his own definitely in that Saints game. He was targeted a lot, and he definitely held his own. Came away with that big-time interception as well. But I think you hit it right on the nail, man. Jimmy Lake has to show us something, and now the ball is in his court. Early on, we seen the focus was on Zach Robinson, like, hey, make something happen. It's your turn to show that the Falcons can score the ball, and now it's kind of turned a little bit where we're looking at Jimmy Lake like, hey, it's your turn to show that we can stop teams and actually like keep them from scoring points. So I think you hit it right on the nail there. As far as anything, I'll just say with the Falcons, the injuries is gonna hurt, but they just gotta stay there. They gotta stay there. I know they're not perfect right now, and I know the injuries is there, but as long as they can keep winning these games that they have to win, you got a shot in the playoffs, because anything can happen once you're in that last game of we'll win and go home type of situation. So that's my thing there. I think Bijan has to continue to be used. Algier obviously has to continue to be used, but that run game for me on the offense is the biggest thing. I know last week we seen Bijan Robinson. He had 29 missed he has 29 missed tackles total, and that's fifth amongst all running backs and all players in the NFL right now, which is just crazy. So a guy like that who's getting loose, you got to make sure you feed him the ball. So other than that, man, I'm hoping we can have another conversation down the line, because we got to keep an eye on him. I know you're going to be keeping an eye on him.
Yeah, we got expectations now.
Yeah, we got expectations. It's no longer like, I know they're going to lose this week. Like, we got actual something to talk about. So I'm excited about it. Last thing, and I'm gonna leave you with this. Last thing, I'm gonna just jump all the way there. Hot take prediction: Falcons get in the playoffs or what?
Yeah, I think so. They're probably gonna win 10 or 11 games, but
okay,
it's gonna be a roller coaster. But I think they ultimately do win 10 or 11 games. I think if they win this game, you're pretty confident they're gonna win this division, because we've seen the Saints. It's not good over there. We know what the Panthers are. The Bucs, the Bucs are going into this stretch where they played the Ravens, they play the Falcons, and then they have to play. I believe they have to play San Francisco and then Kansas City, and they could go 0-4. If the Falcons beat them, there's a chance they go 0-4 there, and that's probably enough breathing room for the Falcons to just take this all the way. But obviously, a lot of season left. The Falcons need to win this one, but if they do, they'll be 4-0 in the NFC South, and they will have 2 head-to-head wins over the Bucs and have secured that tiebreaker. So they'll be in great shape. And the schedule is not terrifying. They do have a couple tough games left. Mm-hmm. They got to play the Vikings. Maybe the Commanders will still be scary by the time we get there. We'll see.
Who knows?
Yeah, it is Cliff Kingsbury offense in December, so who knows what to expect from that. Probably, that hasn't gone well in the past. But,
right.
I think if they can win this game, they really just have to go 500 the rest of the way to secure that 10 wins, and I don't really see the Bucs catching up at that point. So
yeah, I mean it's literally the Falcons' division to lose right now. They have to do it this year, because next year is gonna be another story. Team's gonna be healthy. No telling how good Baker Mayfield will evolve to. They gotta win it this year, because they don't win it this year, they might not see it they really gonna have to fight for the next few years. So I'm gonna leave it with that. And then also, Kevin, man, go ahead, let the people know where they can find you, man, on like the social medias and all of that. Go ahead, let them know where they can find the pod and all of your work, pretty much.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, X, whatever you call it. I'm at Falcoholic Kevin, whatever you want to call it these days. Yeah, at Falcoholic Kevin there, thefalcoholic.com for the written content. The show is the Falcoholic on YouTube is where you can find it there. And then for podcast platforms, it's Dirty Birds and Brews. You can check it all out. It's on all the platforms.
All right, well, cool, man. I'm gonna have to bring you back on come later on in the season. We gotta chop it back up, but until then, man, if you're listening, look, we got some more stuff coming up for you. Just a sec. I've got some news for the run, so stay tuned. You want to hear all of that in the updates of what games you want to watch and all the injuries and updates and stuff like that. So anyway, look, we'll be back in just a sec. We'll take a quick break. It's halftime.